So as we gather here for the World Environment Day to remember our connection to the earth, we offer a prayer at our beginning. We might share this time, balance and contemplation with all those things around us. Om Chagezi to Om Chezi, Jesus Christ, Om Chagezi. Chagawaka, Wogu Hori Chin Narizi Nari Chevichan. Gahaz Navuja Nea Ichia. Greater God, we give thanks for all things, this bounty of the earth that we are connected to, the love and the light that nourishes us, gives us insight and perspective each day as we rise. We pray that we would do our part to help creation, to help creation's voice to be heard, to end destruction, to end exploitation, bring ourselves into balance. We might learn the wisdom of creation through our works, through our prayer times, and through our respect for all things. In these things, we give thanks for our relationships, for what we have learned, what has been passed down to us, how we seek your presence in all things here on earth. We remember that we are one small part of the great story of creation, that we play our part by living according to your teachings, and the teachings that you have hidden in every leaf and every flower, the lessons that we learn from all our cohabitants and those that we enjoy here in this space. We know that we have much work to do to bring balance, much work that we will have to endure in our future. We pray for those that will take on this journey from us, that they might have a better time and find better solutions for the future. Amen. I'm just going to share the screen momentarily here and go through a couple of slides just to kind of orient us to where we are at today. This is the session that we're sharing for World Environment Day, our opening prayer, and the remembrance of our connection to the earth. Here in this land, we call this mountain Iamnathka. It is a holy mountain, a holy space. It is the seat of God and the place where God sits in our land, much like we would hear in the scripture of Mount Zion and other places in the Holy Land where God resided for a particular people. And so it is a blessing to know God in our land and to know God in our past, in our traditions. Here, our land acknowledgement, we speak of an acknowledgement of creation. In our veneration of creation today, we give thanks for the whole of the earth. From our locations, we are welcomed and embraced by creation. We are given instruction and safe passage. We are given relationship with all living and non-living things, the plants, the animals, the streams, the mountains, the air, the waters, the land. Upon this land, we are mothered into our promise, given choices and wisdom to live a good life. We must utilize this wisdom to return our practice back to creation in a loving and helping way. By our action and by our treatment of one another, we speak about ourselves, our upbringing, our lineage, and our values. These things speak more about us than words will ever say, and it is understood by creation even before our words enter into it. May we speak balance in our hearts, speak restitution from our souls, and wisdom from our fingertips. Today, we begin with an understanding of how we are related to the environment. And so a quote from my father's book, These Mountains Are Sacred Places, it says, "Our religion professes faith in one creator and acknowledges the unity and harmony of the creation, the harmony of the whole environment, land, animal, birds, plant life, and men." And in this call to the greater attributes of our society and of the world around us, there is a balance, a give and take from our teaching. We know who we are in this land, and we participate in a way that is hopeful and helpful to the world around us. And so when we relate to this, we think about the ways in which we have been taught the world exists and how we relate to that through our teachings of our ancestors. Here we take from the biblical scripture from the book of Job, chapter 12. "But ask the beasts, and they will teach you, the birds of the heavens, and they will tell you, or the bushes of the earth, and they will teach you, and the fish of the sea will declare to you. Who among all these do not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every living thing and the breath of mankind." And so even in this connection, we understand that creation has a wisdom. The beasts, the birds of the heaven, the bushes of the earth are here as cohabitants and teachers, and who give us wisdom as we move through our environments of what it is to live in these spaces. In Acts 12, we talk about the importance of relating to these spaces. "The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by man, nor is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, but since he himself gives to all men life and breath and everything. And he made from every nation of men to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their habitation." And here, this instruction that says that each group and each civilization, each people are placed in a space where they find relation to creation, and they seek God from those foundations, and they reach out to the world around them to build relationship, to build community in harmony with what they experience, in order to find the best way to live a good life that is flourishing in their context. And so my father says, "In our migrations, as in our vision quest, my people continue to observe the animals, plants, rocks, streams, wind, sun, moon, and stars, and all things. Our teaching has always been that everything was created for a purpose by the Great Spirit. We must therefore respect all things of creation and learn as much as we can. There are lessons hidden in creation that we must learn in order to live a good life and walk the straight path. Behind these lessons and teachings is the Creator. These things can only be understood through the Great Spirit." And so in our Indigenous teaching, there is an acknowledgement that creation is bounded by a relationship with God, bounded by a relationship with all things that are connected to God. Here, I just want to share a bit with you about Alberta Billy. And Alberta Billy is a member of the Weewakai Nation, an elder, the first person who asked for an apology from the United Church of Canada, and so started us on this path towards reconciliation for the country. And part of her recollection and instruction has always been to support the work that we are doing by remembering the lessons of our elders and what it means to be part of creation, what our traditional stories are, and what our understanding about creation has been. I'm just going to play this.
Well, you know, when I was growing up as a young girl and into my teens and adulthood, when I was a young girl, my grandfather said, God has a purpose for you, but we don't know what it is yet. And I think that we need to instill this in our youth, and that's what we were trying to do, for them to believe in themselves, and that would make them strong warriors. And the women were becoming very vocal and not behind the scene anymore. They were the front runners, and they were the connection that we needed, because the women are strong. They have a strong spiritual connection, and they have strength for anything that comes their way. And we needed to hear from the women all around the world, and we were gathered somewhat similar to what your gathering is today. I remember when I was invited to Pennsylvania, where most of the Indigenous people thought I was very fortunate that my government loved us. And I said, no, our government does not like us. They are persistent in trying to get rid of us in so many ways. And we didn't want that residential era to ever happen again. We wanted our youth to be strong in the belief that they were important and that they were to be kind, loving, and respectful to themselves. If they had that concept of connection, they would become strong people in their growing years. But it was important that they had the belief of themselves.
I wanted to do a reading, Berta. I wanted to do a reading what you were talking about, and this is from Psalm 121. And Psalm 121 talks about, I look up to the mountains. Does my strength come from the mountains? No, my strength comes from God, who made heaven and earth and mountains. I just wanted to share that with Berta, talking about the mountains. I met with the Maoris earlier last week, and I have been meeting with the Hawaiians, and they talk about the mountains are our ancestors. The mountains are our ancestors. It's our relations. So I wonder, Berta, if you could maybe talk a little bit about the land and the mountains and the water, like we do with Psalm 121.
You know, if you ever look closely at the mountains, you can see our ancestors. They are engraved in those mountains. Our older people are in those mountains. You can see them. You can actually see the profile of whoever your ancestors are. They are there in the mountains, and the mountains are strength from the Creator. we have a name for our mountains. It's Negedzi, and that means strong mountains. And it's given sometimes to some of our babies when they're born. This is your name, and this is what it means. So the connection that you just read is really important, and you can expand from that little bit of reading, however you perceive it, as long as you know that that connection is the truth, and the truth is you.
I'm just going to stop the share for a moment there and reflect upon that connection of being recognized within that environment, being recognized within the mountain, and what that means to our people as we say that we are connected to the earth. And so how we are part of the story of the earth by the embedding of our bodies within these structures. So my father in his book talks about that these mountains are our temples, they are our places of refuge, and that they are also our tombs. From the mountaintop, our people would be buried in these spaces. And so there are important connections there. Gloria, I'm wondering if you wanted to add anything there.
Yes, I'm here at Sandy Soda with some of our elders, and there's a profound thing one of our elders, Louis Young, was talking about, and that's the direct connection we have to our sacred fire. And so he puts it this way, where the sacred fire is there and it encompasses us, it's in all of things of us. And we in essence are carrying that life force. So as the sun comes to us, it dawned upon him that, there's always this spirituality based understanding of the world. And then there's the scientific basis of the world. And so when he brought forth this story, he said that life force becomes part of the, not a scientific definition, but a spiritual one. And so he explained the story of how when a person passes away, that life force doesn't go to a bad place, or, for lack of a better term, a hell, because there's no concept in Indigenous societies of that. Instead, it goes back into the life force. It returns back up into the heavens or into the skies above. So those dust and those particles are there in the lights, and then they figure as part of the northern lights. So in our traditional stories, when we say that the northern lights are there and our ancestors are dancing, we literally mean that our ancestors are dancing because it's their life force. And you see that in the way that the dancing happens with the northern lights. So all these stories have a reason, an interconnectivity. And so that gets regenerated back. So we're regenerating from a life force, a sacred fire, into that going to heaven or a sacred place. And then we do regenerate back into Mother Earth, Inamakoche. And I thought that was such a beautiful way of explaining the continuity of life, the sacredness of life, and the Indigenous ways of knowing. To tell us that story, and he's a fire keeper. So he keeps that fire, that knowledge, to teach to others. This is the reason for the fire. This is the reason for why we tend this, because those ancestors will be going up, and that'll be what we remember of them. And we honor them when we will have ceremony, we'll have a memorial. Sometimes you'll go outside and you'll see those ancestors dancing because they're happy, because they come close to us. So as we talk on World Indigenous Day here, the very profound connections we have to our Mother Earth, our Ina, our Mother, they're immeasurable. And as we go forth, it's incumbent upon us as citizens of the world to understand one another and understand this Indigenous ways of knowing, so that, you know, these elders, they have profound knowledge, and we don't want that to be lost in any way. And that's World Environment Day is, it's something we live every day. It's our way of being in connection. And our elders always say, you know, nature, or Inama Koche, Mother Earth is our church. They say that the profound connection, when you go in and spend time with walking or with the trees, or you see an animal, or you see a sign, or an eagle comes to you, these are signs that Creator is giving you, that you're walking a good path, that you're there, that you're helping, that you're living in harmony with nature. It's a very real thing. And I just wanted to add that I had understandings with some of our people, and as we go forward, we give thanks. And as we give thanks, we're looking at the traditional knowledge that's passed on. And our traditional knowledge is so sacred that in oral traditions, this is how it's passed to us. Just like the elder coming forward and showing us in a story. And, you know, that moment is precious, because I never would have known that story had I not come to San Soto and sat with a fire keeper. And he told that story. He was so emotional. He told that story at the grad, that he was so happy for life, and so happy for this world, that he wanted people to know, brought him to tears to talk about it. That's how deep our commitment is to our Mother Earth, how we move in the sacred spaces we've been given, how we honor our Mother Earth. It's a simple thing, but it's a monumental thing, because we pray and we give thanks. My Auntie Glenda always tells the story of how our grandma, Ina Cora, told us to pray, and that one of the most sacred ways, one of our sacred animals is the bluebird or the robin. The robin has specific prayers. And so when the robin comes out, you hear the robin chirp, chirp away, you know, and they're going on and on and on. And they're praying for every creation, every branch, every tree, every animal, everything in the world. And they're giving thanks. That's the robin's song. That's the robin's prayer. And so when my auntie tells this story, it's very, it warms your heart, because these are our birds, are our brothers and sisters. On behalf of all human beings, they're out there and they're praying, whether we know it or not. I mean, we can't speak bird, but we can hear them. And, you know, we can know that there's a solace in that, that this young little bird is praying for us to keep the world going, and praying for everybody. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Give thanks today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to share this screen as we were talking about mountains, and as Gloria mentioned about our connection to the earth. This mountain called Ihage Nakota, meaning the last Nakota. It also has had a derogatory name, and they changed the name to Haling Peak in the early 2010 area. And this mountain is part of a story, and is part of a way that we view the presence of this mountain. It was said that there was an individual who so loved this area in and around Canmore that he wanted to stay there forever. And so by the magic of our special being, our prophet and almost like wizard to the indigenous people, to the Stony people, Inktomi is our trickster figure, but he's also the first human created. And he turned this person into this mountain. And so the story of how we are related to the mountains takes another deeper meaning and resonance as we think about that. Think about these are our ancestors. And so my father writes, our Mother Earth called us from the forests, the prairies, the valleys, the mountainous areas, the lakes, the rivers, and springs. Come, my children, come and eat from the fruits and gather from the abundance of this land. Come, everyone who thirsts, come and drink pure spring waters that are especially provided for you. Everywhere, the spirits of all living things were alive. And so this understanding that nature gave freely, and nature was abundantly present in our lives to help us to survive, to nurture us, and to bring us wisdom and understanding by connecting with us and giving us what we needed at that time, sending the animals that would come to us in our visions and in our dreams, that would speak to us and give us information and talk about the things to come. So this deep well of knowing and being interrelated to creation was very important. I'm going to stop the share here and just see if we have any comments or feedback, things you want to share. And I will, I'm not including this in the recording, but we'll just share for a bit from those, just from what you've heard. Thank you for that vulnerability, because maybe others who aren't able to share that or to be here to share that information feel the same way. And so I think that that's an important place to be in. I'm going to share this short video.
This air that I'm sitting here and breathing as you and I talk not only comes from you and shares you in that manner, but it also comes from Oklahoma, South Dakota, Alaska, China, the Thunder Nation. And all of those things combined are now part of me, and the same with the water that I drink and the food that I eat. And the intricate connection that we have is very physical, very scientific, and very spiritual.
I encourage people that aren't indigenous to this land, go back home and experience, even if it is just for a week vacation. Go back, see where you come from. Go back to where your people first put their feet and feel that soil, touch that tree, walk in that water, build that appreciation for the land that you come from.
This earth is a living being. We are simply blessed to be part of her.
So that connection, I think, is important, where we are trying to build bridges into ways of thinking, that it is also connected to our practice and how we take that on from the lessons that we learn from other people, from other groups, from others, how they engage with the world. And I will just conclude our session with a talk that my father gave in the at the Ecumenical Conference in 1992. And so he shared a particular message for the people and an understanding about how we are in the world.
This year, we are not celebrating the 500 years, but we are commemorating. We are looking back at what has happened to our people. We understand, as I mentioned earlier, that European people who came to the Americas were fleeing from religious persecution in Europe. They were being persecuted for their beliefs. Even some of them were hung or killed. They were looking for a land of religious freedom. And they found one here. A beautiful land, a land of religious freedom. And what did they do when they came over? They quickly enslaved those who had religious freedom, our people. They sent some to the residential schools, where they were not allowed to speak their language, where they were not allowed to follow their traditions. And also, I would say that in the mountains we have sacred areas, special areas, particularly the mountain hot springs. We used to go there for healing. On the request of the medicine man or the medicine woman, some of our people went to the hot springs for cleansing, for healing. Where are those hot springs today? They are resort areas. People are making a lot of money there. We could no longer have that religious freedom or to go to those places for healing. I might even paraphrase the saying of Christ when he overthrew the tables and sent the money changers out of the temple, saying to them, "You have made my house of prayer a den of thieves." We could also say similar things to those in those hot spring areas. You have made our place of prayer a den of thieves. We as Native people have experienced many things in this country, our homeland. At times we feel like strangers in our homeland. But recently some of the developments, the constitutional developments, if they follow through with that, at last, maybe justice. At last, we will have a right. We will be given the right to make decisions for our future. I hope that the new Constitution will recognize our rights, our self-determination, our religion, our philosophies, our teachings of respecting Mother Earth. As I mentioned earlier, the reason why our people call the land our mother, if you look at the family as human beings, by nature we respect our mother, respect our father, respect our immediate family, our sisters and our brothers, the close-knit community, the close-knit family. And when you see them as a family, as part of you, you respect them. And they respect you. When you see the land as your mother, as part of you, then you will know what our native people are saying. It's part of us. This beautiful land is part of us, and we're part of this beautiful land.
So that is the sharing that I wanted to bring for us for this time, and to remember these lessons that are handed down that are different from what others experience and understand, and that we are blessed to have heard the wisdom that is shared, and how important that is as we think about our place in creation, our relationships to one another, and to all things living and non-living that bind us in this relationship with God, and teach us from the lessons of the birds singing to the waters, and the blessing of the waters to cleanse our body and our spirit, and all things that we engage with in a holy way in these lands, that, as my father said, we may not have access to, we may have lost access to, or if we try to go and pray in some of our areas that are now designated as provincial parks, we are interrupted, we are ostracized, or claiming that we are not allowed to do something in those areas. With the 2010 agreement that was signed with the Banff Parks, we needed that agreement in order to be able to go back to these areas, to pick our medicines, and to help with that stewardship of the land, to make sure that it is there for the next generation.
Awesome. Yeah, I just, when you talk about a relationship, that interconnectedness, and you think about the dream catcher, that's the web of life. And that one little movement that I make affects all the movements of everything that's around me. And when we think about that movement, we also think about the stars, because we're star people. And we have a story about when the people a long time ago weren't very good about the environment. And what happened was they threw the bones of our brothers, the salmon, into the river. And the salmon people, the salmon people, when they're swimming back upstream, they found those bones and they took it back to the salmon king. And he says, "Oh, what's happening to our people?" So there was no more fish in the river, in the great river where I'm from, Stolo River, what they call the Fraser River. And so they sent a lot of, I won't go on with the story, but they sent a lot of animals to talk to the king and the queen salmon, to ask to send their children up the river so we could have that sustenance. And sure enough, it was, I'll skip ahead a lot. It was the brother bear that finally helped us and convinced the salmon people to come back up the stream. And they said, "Well, how do we get to heaven?" "You follow that stream," they said. "That river, the great Fraser River, as you call it, and I'll help you get over those rocks. You'll see them today, even the fish jump." But it was so the bear scoops them up, helps them up over those river to go to you'll get to the spirit world from there. There's what you call the spawning grounds. And in that way, the bear helps him, and but one, he took a big swipe and it landed on a bank. I'll keep that one. So he still helps him, and he got all the way, and then finally he came to that Mount Chim. He goes like this, takes a big, huge swipe, the Great Bear. And sure enough, the salmon children, people went up and went into the spirit world and turned into stars. And that's what started that big swipe, started that whole parade of the constellations. And my wife's people have the same story, but theirs is the Sig women, the seven sisters go on top of that mountain, what the Bear Lodge in Wyoming, on top of that, and he was on top, and he took a swipe too and started it that way. So even though we have different stories, it's the same story, but a different perspective. So you listen to all the native people, they say the same story, but it's a different perspective because we're all woven together. That's what I like to express on this Earth Day. And each and every one, we're all a fabric of that dream catcher, the web of life. And that together, it's only together that we can change. Kukstamutla.
That's why we say Daguchawa, all my relations. Mitakuyasin, all my relations. That's why we say that, because it is that. Snitch, pretty much.
What my mom would always say was we are all connected with us animals and the flowers and the birds and all of Mother Earth. We're all connected, and we need to take care of Mother Earth, is what she would say, and Mother Earth will take care of us. I think that's with climate change. We abuse the land, and then I think the land is hurting, so I think it's trying to say something. As Native people, we need to get back to the land. I'll say Wonchage in my Stony language. Wonchage, Tawang Jesus Christ, Chabar, Tachang Wakan, Wahung Chake, Wahain Chine, Na Ingi Chabichin, Nanga Hines, Nango, Echefna, Eches. Amen.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming, taking part today. And we will continue in the work as we ally toolkit that will begin tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock. So we'll see most of you there, and thank you for coming today.